6 children, 1 woman, 1 stove with 2 rings on it, and 20 minutes before the light, in a cold kitchen, to send 6 boxes out the door. 30 boxes a week. 30. And I want you to sit with that number a moment, because if you try to imagine cooking 30 lunches in a week, you will feel tired before you have begun, and you will decide, quite sensibly, that it cannot be done, and that a woman who did it must have been a saint or a martyr, or up at 4 in the morning weeping over a pan. She was none of those things. She was my mother, and she was not tired, and she was not up at 4. Because here is the secret, and it is the whole of this video, and once you have it, you will never look at a lunch the same way again. She never made a lunch. Not once. In all those years, I never saw my mother make a single lunch. I only ever saw her make supper. That is the invention. That is the entire SHOWA-ERA Bento, and the reason it could feed 6 children all week for the price of almost nothing. A bento is not a meal you cook. A bento is a meal you aimed. Everything in that box was cooked the night before, at supper, on purpose, in a quantity that was slightly, quietly, deliberately more than we could eat. And nobody at that table ever noticed, because a mother who is planning well is a mother nobody notices planning. So the box in the morning was not cooking. It was 5 minutes of packing. She was not a cook at dawn. She was a person filling a box with things that already existed. Now here is the arithmetic, and I want you to see it plain. Rice is the box. Rice is 2/3 of it, and rice costs almost nothing, and rice is what actually fills a child. 1 bag of rice, a dozen eggs, 1 pack of the cheap chicken, a few vegetables, a jar of pickle. That is 30 lunches. 30 for the price of 2 bought at a counter. There is nothing hard in any of it. There is no skill in it at all. There is only a way of thinking, and I am going to give you the whole of it tonight. Let me show you step by step. Now, I said she was not tired, and that was not quite honest of me, and I will not lie to you. I remember the sound of it more than the sight. The lid of the rice pot before it was light. 6 boxes on the counter in a row, and her moving down the line. And I remember that she did not hurry. She had done it so many thousand times that her hands knew it, the way your hands know a button. And there is a thing I did not understand until I was much older, and it is this. When the 6 boxes were filled, whatever was left, the broken bits, the burnt edge of the egg, the end piece, the one that fell apart, went onto a plate for her, and she ate standing up. And if you had asked her, she would have told you honestly that she liked the end pieces best. She did not like the end pieces best. That is what I carry, and it is why I am telling you any of this. That the whole cleverness of the thing, the planning, the aiming of the supper, the doing of the work a day early so the morning was easy, all of it was invisible on purpose. We were children. We opened our boxes at noon and thought lunch simply happened. That was the point. The work was meant to be invisible. That is what she was actually making every night, and it was not food. Before I go further, I want to say one quick thing. The old ways my family kept, there is more of it than fits in any one video. I have gathered the whole of it into a book, and you will find it at the link below. The book is the long version. If you want it, it is there. I will not mention it again. Now the rule. There is only one rule, and everything else follows from it, so hold on to it. Is it good cold? That is the entire filter. Not is it good. Is it good cold, 4 hours from now, at room temperature, having been carried on a bicycle? That question decides everything that goes in that box, and it is why the bento looks the way it looks and always has. Because here is what most folks get wrong. They take last night's supper, which was wonderful hot, and they put it in a box, and at noon it is a sad, wet, gray thing, and the child does not eat it, and everyone concludes that bento is difficult. It is not difficult. It simply has a rule, and they broke it before they started. So what passes? Rice passes, and it is the reason rice is the foundation, for cold rice is still good rice. Fried things pass beautifully, and that is why the fried chicken lives in the box, for it is one of the few fried things that is as good cold as hot. Anything glazed passes, for a glaze is a lacquer and it clings and does not run. Simmered things pass, and they get better overnight besides. Rolled egg passes, pickles pass. Anything salty, anything sweet, anything dry. And what fails? Anything leafy which goes to slime, anything with a thin sauce which runs to the corners and floods the rice, anything that is only good because it is hot, which is most things if you are honest. Once you have that rule in your hand, you do not need a recipe for a bento ever again, because you can look at any dish in the world and know in a second whether it belongs in that box. Now, the second rule, and it comes straight from the first, and it is the one nobody tells you, and it is the one that actually ruins boxes. Water is the enemy. Every wet thing in that box is working against you from the moment the lid goes on. It floods the rice, it makes the fried things soggy, and worst of all, it will spoil the food by noon on a warm day, and that is not a small matter when it is a child's lunch. So, everything gets drained. If you have simmered something, lift it out of its liquid and let it drip, and do not spoon the broth in after it. If you have a wet thing you love, sit it on a bit of lettuce or a paper cup so it cannot touch the rice. And here is the one that matters most, and I want you to hear it plainly. Everything must be completely cold before the lid goes on. Completely. Not warm, not nearly. Cold. Why? Because warm food under a closed lid steams, and that steam has nowhere to go, and it turns to water on the underside of the lid, and it rains back down onto the food all morning. A box packed warm arrives wet, and it arrives spoiled. A box packed cold arrives dry and good. That is the whole of it, and it is why my mother filled the boxes and then left the lids off on the counter while she did everything else, and only put them on at the very last moment before we went out the door. Lids off until cold. That single habit is worth more than any recipe I could give you. Now, the shape of the box, and here is where I am going to tell you a thing that will change how you see every bento you have ever looked at. Half the box, or a little more, is rice, packed in flat and firm right up against the walls. A quarter is the main thing, the chicken or the fish or whatever the supper was. And the last quarter is 2 or 3 little things, whatever was left, a bit of simmered vegetable, an egg, a pickle. Now pack it tight, truly tight. Wedge those little things in against each other so that nothing at all can move. And here is why, and this is the thing. That box is going to be carried. It is going on a bicycle. It is going into a bag. It is going to be swung and knocked and set down hard by an 8-year-old. And a box with a gap in it is a box where everything slides into one corner and arrives as a shameful heap, and the child opens it in front of the other children, and something small happens to them. So you pack it tight so it cannot move. That is all. That is the only reason. And here is the beautiful part. That is why bento are composed. That is why they are arranged in those neat little compartments, and why every space is filled, and why folks the world over now look at them and call them art. It was never art. It was engineering. The tightness was structural. The beauty is a byproduct of a mother making sure her child's lunch did not arrive as a mess. It only looks like art because a bicycle shakes. Now, let me give you the old freezer trick, and it is the cleverest thing in this whole video, and it costs nothing. When you make your simmered vegetables or your little side things, make far more than you need, and freeze them in single portions in little cups, and then, on the morning, you drop one in frozen. Straight from the freezer into the box, hard as a stone. And it does 2 jobs at once, which is why it is such a good trick. By noon it has thawed, and it is perfectly good and ready to eat. And all morning while it was thawing, it was sitting in that box keeping everything around it cold, which on a warm day is the very thing you wanted. It is a side dish and an ice block, and it is the same object. The old kitchens found that out long before anyone sold a cold pack in a shop. Now, the fork in the road. And this one is not really about taste. It is about what a family had. There is the packed box, the one I have described, with the chicken and the egg and the vegetables and the pickle, and it is a good box and a full one. And then there is the plain box. Rice, filling the whole of it, flat and white, and 1 red pickled plum set in the middle, nothing else. And that is the box a great many children in this country carried through the lean years, and it fed a generation, and there is no shame anywhere in it. And I will tell you something about that plum that most folks have forgotten, because they think it is decoration. It is not decoration. That plum is fiercely sour and fiercely salty, and its acid keeps the rice around it from turning on a warm morning. It was put there to preserve the lunch. It was a working thing that happened to be beautiful, which is this entire dish in one small red object. Both boxes are honest, both are old. Neither is wrong. And if all you have this week is rice and a plum, then you have a bento, and you have what my mother had more often than she ever let on. Now, let me put a real week together for you, so you can see the aiming. You are not cooking for lunch. You are cooking supper and simply making more. On the night you fry chicken, fry extra, and the extra goes cold into the boxes tomorrow, and it is as good cold as hot, and every child is happy. On the night you make something glazed, glaze an extra piece. On the night you simmer vegetables, simmer twice what you need, and half of it goes into little cups into the freezer, and it will feed boxes for 3 weeks. Roll an egg on a Sunday, and it will do 2 mornings. Keep a jar of pickle, and there is always the last corner of every box filled. And that is the week. You never cooked a lunch. You cooked 4 suppers slightly too large, and 30 boxes came out of it. That is the whole trade, and it took my mother no extra time at all, because the pan was already hot and the stove was already on and the work was already happening. Making more of a thing you are already making costs you almost nothing. That is the quiet arithmetic underneath the whole of it. Now, I want to be plain about who profits from you believing that a bento is hard. There is the counter at the shop, of course, with the boxes in plastic, twice what they cost to make. And there is a whole freezer aisle now of little frozen side dishes sold in cups, sold to you in cups, so that you may put them in the box in the morning, which is the exact thing my mother did for nothing with what was left of her own supper. But here is the one that troubles me, and I will say it plainly. There is now an entire trade in bento equipment. The cutters, the punches, the molds, the little sheets for making faces, the tools for turning a lunch into a picture of a bear. And it is all sold on one idea, and the idea is this, that the box is where a mother proves she loves her child, and that the proof must be purchased. That is a cruel thing to sell to a tired woman, and it is exactly backwards from what that box ever was. That box was never a performance. It was a system. It was thrift and planning and a rule about cold food. The prettiness was structural. My mother did not carve anything into a shape. She had 6 of them to fill and a job to get to. And we felt loved anyway, and we felt loved by the fact of the box existing at all, which is what children actually notice. Nobody schemed to turn a thrifty box into a thing that makes mothers feel they are failing. It is worse than that. It is just a system nobody has to coordinate. A slow drift, where the aiming of the supper went unpracticed and unpassed down, and the shops filled the gap with cups and cutters, until a box that was invented so that a poor woman could feed 6 children on rice became a small daily examination that a woman can fail. It was never an examination. It was last night's supper in a box, packed tight so it would not slide. The women of that time fed 6 children 30 lunches a week on a bag of rice, and none of us ever knew it was clever, and we are only beginning to remember how. Now tell me something down in the comments. Did your mother cut the little sausages into octopuses? And be honest with me. Do you still do it? For children who are far too old for it and would never admit they look for it? I would dearly love to know. And tell me this too. What was the one thing in your box that made it a good day when you opened the lid and saw it there? Every one of us had one. Tell me. Next time, I am going to show you the one thing in that box that I will admit I did cook for the box. The only one. The rolled egg. Cooked in a little rectangular pan, layer over layer over layer, rolled up as it goes, until it is a golden log you slice into rounds, sweet and soft and just firm enough to sit in a corner and hold its shape all morning. It is made from eggs and the very same bottles I showed you last time. It costs pennies, and it is the thing my children look for first every single day. Next time, the rolled egg. Until then, take good care of the ones at your table, and keep a kitchen that knows the box was never a lunch. It was last night's supper, aimed.